Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, time to sit back and enjoy. It's time to start the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome the McCann Dogs!
Y'all ready for this?
Welcome to the Super Pet Dog Show. This is our fifth show today, our fifth and final show, and you're going to see the best show possible, folks.
I've known Marty and Debbie for over 10 years. I've worked with them across the country at the Canadian National Sportsman Show and the Toronto Sportsman Show, and I'm ecstatic to have them here at Ontario Place. They truly are put on a great show and are great performers, and there's nothing better than the McCann Dogs.
McCann Dogs train family pets for a living. We train over 700 a week. They come from all over Southern Ontario, but probably the most enjoyable part of what we do is dog entertainment. The reaction of the audience just is a real high for both ourselves and the dogs. Our trainers especially love getting a break from teaching to performing and entertaining. We've entertained millions of people for over 20 years. It's always enjoyable. I love watching the reaction. I love seeing the people's faces, sometimes doubling over with laughter. The dogs are all family pets. We have upwards of 50 dogs, various breeds, sizes, shapes, ages, purebred mixed breed. In 1984, we entertained at the Pacific National Exhibition in Vancouver. The star of the show in those days was a little Yorkshire Terrier, a little tiny, few pound dog. Her name was Amanda. She stole the show every time. Over the years, we've had a Jack Russell that was, caught a Frisbee bigger than she was. We had a dog that caught a garbage can lid. The last several years, Fred, Vietnamese pot-bellied pig, has been the star of the show. So there's always a new and exciting star of the show.
I like Fred the pig.
McCann Dogs is willing to perform inside or outside, rain or shine. We've several times had performed through pouring rain and not only maintained our crowd, but built a crowd.
This is the weed pool. Look at that entry point, folks. Welcome to Ontario Place.
I think the audience is impressed with how well trained the dogs are, how fast they are, how enthusiastic they are. They also enjoy when the dogs don't do it perfectly, because they can identify with that dog so much like their family pet. Certainly the dogs are highly trained, but it's fun and funny show.
Thank you very much. There we go, Flash. Here comes Soul.
Y'all ready for this?
And who's gonna win, folks? Red team by a nose.
Immediately following our shows, we always bring the audience down to meet the dogs, pet them, and ask questions of the trainers. So it's a lot of interaction between the crowd and dogs and trainers. A lot of fun. It's very important for us to satisfy the sponsors' needs, and that is getting their name out there, promoting their name, whether that's visually or in our commentary.
Welcome to the Super Pet Dog Show.
The crowds love the dogs. The dogs are full of energy. When the audience finds out that these are house pets that are trained, they just think that's fabulous. They know that they can have their pet trained to do something similar. McCann Dogs, dog training is a wonderful investment, and it's worth every penny that we spend.
The media loves the dogs because the public loves the dogs. There's always lots of media attention, and we want the media to feel comfortable with our show. Whether it's doing media, early morning television show, or interview for the newspaper, we want the sponsor to feel that they really got good value for our family entertainment show. Because without the sponsor, we wouldn't be able to go to San Francisco, Indianapolis, Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto. We've been invited all across North America, even to Japan.
We love the McCann dogs.
We're really lucky to be in this business.
Here in our training facility, we've helped more than 100,000 dog owners to overcome the same dog training challenges that you have. But tonight, we do this show for you. We want you to get involved, to ask your questions, and most importantly, we want to have some fun. So let's hop on board the training train. It's time to head on over to the train station. We're back!
Do we look different?
It's been a month. It's been a month since we got to hang out with you guys, have a train station, chat about dog training. And in today's show, we thought it would be appropriate, especially with everyone that's getting outside and doing more with their dogs as the weather's a little bit nicer, although it's been a little bit hot. But people are getting out. There's less restrictions. I don't know where you are, but here we're starting to see like decreasing restrictions because of
slowly but
the COVID
surely
levels. So we thought today we'd want to talk about some really foundational stuff for you to help you be a better trainer for your dog. And in today's show, we're going to talk about the 5 most common dog training mistakes that people make. And I love these episodes because you can take this information and start applying it to your training so that you can be a better trainer. You can start to see more success with your dog. And it's like super common stuff. So when it's not lockdown time, we, when we don't have COVID limited classes, we have about 500 dogs every single week come through our training facility, and all breeds, all sizes, ages, all kinds of different dogs and handlers. And these 5 mistakes really stick out. These are really common things. You might be doing it and you don't even realize it. So we thought it would be a good thing to talk about in tonight's episode. And I mean, I'm just excited to get going. I'm excited to toot some more. I'm excited to have you here. So with no further ado, today's show, we're going to talk about the 5 most common dog training mistakes people make. My name's Ken Steepe.
My name's Kayl McCann.
Welcome back to McCann Dogs. I see some familiar names in the chat. I see, you'll see our moderators. So if you see someone with a blue wrench and their name is in blue, they're one of our moderators. We have Instructor Alexis, Instructor Shannon, Dan, Lots of Links Luton. He's our moderator, man. And you might see a new name in there, one that you may have seen before, but now she's actually an official moderator, I guess.
She's part of the McCann Dogs team.
Part of the McCann Dogs team. Instructor Shandy is in the chat.
Yeah.
So we're excited to have her there. I also see lots of new names, people I've never seen before. If you're new, we sort of, I see, who just said that? Elizabeth said, yeah, it's my first time here.
Nice,
If you're new, just drop new in the chat because we have a pretty solid show structure we go through. We have a process that we go through, but if you're brand new, we might be able to change some of the language and really make sure that you're in the know as we talk about a lot of these things. But we're excited to have you here. It's been a month for us. It's been a month since we were in the studio shooting a train station. So I'm pretty pumped to be here.
Yeah.
Now, you heard me mention Dan, the moderator, man. In fact, Dan's been with us a long time doing his moderation. So what we did is we launched a satellite.
Oh, look at all those new people.
We grabbed a water balloon slingshot and a can of corn and tied it to this satellite.
A can of corn.
So that we could see exactly what Dan is doing while he's moderating. Let's check in with the McCann Dog satellite. Still in orbit. There he is. Oh, wait a second.
Aw,
That's
it's
Lucy Lou. That's not Dan at all. So excuse any of the mistyping, any of the misspelling. If Lucy's running the links,
or if the links are better tonight, then maybe Dan's out of a job and we should hire Lucy.
Yeah. I see lots of you guys are new. Look at that. I see Rhonda, Jeffrey, Helen, Joyce. You know what? So many people who are joining us here for the first time and they're brand new here. We need to do something to find out something we do every week is our roll call. We have amazing students from all over the world, and I've learned so much about geography by researching where you guys are coming from. So let us know where you're joining the train station from tonight, and in just a moment we'll do a romper room minute. Because that's fun for me, and I like seeing where everyone is joining us from. So, big picture, what effect do these common mistakes have on people's dog training? You know, what are they going to fix tonight, or what are they going to have the information to fix tonight?
Well, the whole purpose or the whole focus or goal with our dog training methods at McCann Dogs is to try to set the dog up for success, which means we want to train you how to get your dog to do things right far more before they do things wrong. And the stuff that we're going to go over tonight are really common things that people make mistakes with. And sometimes if those mistakes go on for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, it's a lot harder to fix. So the goal is to bring attention to these particular issues with you guys tonight so that you can kind of keep them in the back of your mind. So as you move forward with your training, regardless of your dog's age, you can kind of think about things a little bit different. I think sometimes people forget to think about things from like the dog's perspective and how the dog interprets things. We just kind of think about our side of it. So hopefully some things will be clear, and your success will skyrocket with your training with some of these things kept in mind.
See, Destiny the King joining us from Canada. It's a pretty big country. We're in Canada as well, so we're excited to have you here.
Canada.
Lindsay's from Arkansas. I see Peg L from Converse, Texas. Peg L is also a Heart Dog supporter.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us here, Peg. Archie from Indiana. Waynette from Lakewood. Kathy from California. I see Tonawanda, New York, North Carolina. Comox, BC. Very
Nice.
cool. We have family in BC right now. PG from New Jersey. Bill's Willie from Manhattan, Kansas. North Carolina getting my first mini in 9 days. Well, congratulations. It's a pretty exciting time. Tonight's show is going to be helpful for you.
Yeah.
I saw another Heart Dog member, Charlotte from Houston, Texas.
Nice.
Heart Dog supporter. Thanks for joining us tonight. L. Lewis says, not new, but occasional. Happy to have you here, L. Lewis. Pedro's from Portugal.
Nice.
Maureen's staying up late in London, UK. I know it's late for you. I appreciate you hanging out with us. For Maureen's sake, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in to the first point that we want to talk about. What's even more fun is I created tiny things. Logos,
you created tiny things?
Tiny
wow.
lower thirds for
that
this
must have been
event.
very difficult for you.
The first thing we need to talk about when we are talking about the most common mistakes, dog training mistakes that people make, and this is so common, and it is the thing that's probably might be holding you back. This is 100% the reason why people get dependent on food, why people can't solve some of the nuisance behaviors.
Or literally why dogs don't listen.
Or absolutely. Or they learn. And what's funny is they learn to not listen.
Yeah.
You know, they learn with poor timing. Let's talk a little bit about how impactful timing can be in people's training.
Yeah, timing is huge because dogs have a very specific learning time frame. And if we aren't giving our dogs good information within that time frame, it's hard for the dog to really know what they should and shouldn't be doing. And this goes for both negative and positive feedback. Yeah. It can be something as, you know, if you let your dog pull you down the street, you know, for 10 minutes, then all of a sudden you say, that's it, I've had enough of this, and then you decide you're going to do something about it. Well, you have bad timing. You've just allowed a behavior to be, you know, rehearsed for a long time before affecting it. Or another thing that people often, you know, pass by with timing is rewarding the good stuff. There's lots of times where we see dogs making really great choices and people don't really notice, and then that moment kind of passes by, and then something bad happens, and then the people focus on the negative rather than the positive. So, you know, you want to try to think about, you know, moments in time when your dogs are doing things as like a little snapshot, and that way, that's why we come up with things like using the word yes as like our marker command. We have other verbals that we use for if the dog makes a mistake, depending on what they're doing, but that timing is delivered at a very specific time, and that's within 1 second of the behavior, which means you have to be pretty on it to, you know, give the information in a effective time.
Do you, when you're working on a skill, you know, we use a lot of food. It might be B.
I think it's Mac.
Oh, is that? When you're working on a skill, we talk a lot about the front end of your training when you're learning how to teaching your puppy who has zero foundation, zero understanding of what you want from them. We use a lot of food, and in fact, we will lure the dog a lot with food at the very beginning. Somebody just dropped a super chat. Vicky, I'm going to get right back to your super chat, but thanks for dropping it. So what we need to figure out is we don't want to be dependent on food. You know, food's a really valuable tool, but all of our training is working toward a point where we don't need it anymore. So we start with luring. You know, we really make it very clear we have food in our hand. But do you feel like the only time your dog listens is when you're holding a treat? When you're shaking the treat bag, when you've got your hand in your pocket where they know those delicious treats are? Super common. And I don't want you to feel bad about that, because this is one of the hurdles that a lot of people run into with their dog training. But if you don't use good timing, and we'll talk about the timing in just a second, if you don't use good timing, you will become dependent on the food, and then you're in trouble. Then your dog will only listen when you're holding that treat.
I can use the cookie example with you. So Ken's like, what's that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, if you we see this a lot with dogs when like dogs are in the backyard, or the dogs aren't listening and the person says, you know, do this thing, and the dogs are like, I don't know if I want to listen to you, and they're like, oh, fine, and then they pull out a piece of food or they wiggle the bag. And my joke was more so that if I want Ken to do something, I just have to like show him candy, or hey.
Who's getting fired up?
Be quiet.
They love these tips. The dogs are pumped. They heard candy, and I felt the same way. I started growling just a little bit.
The point is, if I want Ken to do anything for me, I show him candy, and then I get whatever I want, because he's very, very motivated by it. But the same thing with the dogs. If you're only getting your dog to respond to you because you're asking, they're not listening, and then you say, okay, fine, and then you whip out the treats, the dogs are going to learn, okay, well, I'll wait long enough, you're going to pull the food out. And that's not really the order in which we want to do it. We actually want to do it the opposite. We want to start with lots of food. We want to build a lot of value for listening, and then we slowly wean off of the treats so that the food becomes less of a lure and it becomes more of a reward. And once your training starts to continue, the rewards can start to be more random. And one of the things that we really like to do in our training is teach the dog. I don't know if you guys can see the giant fly that's like keeps going by the thing. So if we suddenly swat like this, it's actually at something, not
Kayle's
something.
Practicing to be a ninja.
Anyways, we teach the dog to really love the word yes by doing a lot of association, by saying yes and then feeding. Yes, then feed. Yes, then feed. Yes, then feed. So the dog starts to feel really good about the word yes. And eventually, as time goes on, if your dog really loves that word yes, after, you know, months and months and months of training, you don't have to feed every single time you say yes. You know, the yes actually becomes the reward in itself. But a lot of people kind of skip through those progressions, and they just start depending on the food and using it and abusing it in a way that the dog becomes very dependent on it.
What might be the most important part of that, when Kayle's saying yes, then feed, is the then.
Yes.
You give your command, you pause for a moment, and then you reward. And this is where a lot of people fall apart, because what often happens is someone will put a treat in their dog's face and then say, sit, and then lift up. Well, what do you think your dog is thinking about? And sit is a very simple, straightforward example, but it is so obvious. If you are giving the command at the same time you're putting treats on your dog's nose, or you're presenting food, the dog is focused on one thing. So you need to make sure it's command, then lure, or command, then reward. I'm just going to say a huge thank you to Mary H. dropping the super chat.
And I don't think it would be a train station without Mary.
I know. Mary's great.
Thank you, Mary.
We also have to say a huge thank you to Vicky W. We're going to jump in before we finish talking about timing. Vicky, North Carolina, new here, but not with your videos. Question, getting a Morkie at the end of the month.
Aww,
Any
cute.
suggestions? Kayl, you look beautiful tonight. Ken, keep on tooting. I'll drop another toot just for you.
I'm glad you didn't say it the other way around, that Ken looked beautiful and that I needed to keep tooting.
Yeah, I know.
I'm glad you did it the order that you did.
I wouldn't let her touch the whistle.
Getting a Morkie at the end of the month, any suggestions? That's such a big question, Vicky. I don't even know where to go with it, but I think I would definitely check out some of the videos that we have. Actually, we have a really good one. If you've seen lots of videos, I'm sure you've seen this, but we have a video where we actually filmed the first 24 hours of us having our newest dog, Euchre, home, and we showed about like how we introduced her to the crate, what training we did, you know, everything that we did with her in that 24 hours. So if you haven't seen that one, I think that would be a really, really good one to reference. But I think the things that you should probably focus on in the beginning is just take some time to get to know her. Start off with really easy things. Big suggestion is go to crate training right away. A lot of time we have to help some of our students when the fact that they wait really long before they start introducing the crate because they think they have to kind of build into it, and that actually makes it harder. So right away would be good. Play around with some food. Just start doing some interactions if you can. And with a small dog of that size, confidence is going to be a big thing. So the bond that you guys have is going to be really, really important because it can be a big, scary world out there. And the tighter bond that you guys have through training and interaction, the easier it is going to be able to conquer some of those challenges that you're going to face. We all face them, but it's always easier when you have a little bit more.
And this is going to seem really pitchy, but it seems like the most appropriate thing. We should also talk about our Puppy Essentials program.
Yes, we definitely can talk about that. So we do have an online class. For those of you who are here, I'm sure you're here because you've seen lots of our YouTube videos. They're obviously great. We give a ton of information, but something that you may find even more valuable is the ability to access instructors daily to get actual feedback about your specific puppy. Because when we put videos out there online, we're trying to make sure that we get, the information out that's going to work for, most of the puppies out there. But something that we do with our Puppy Essentials program is we have a really great progressional program that shows you exactly where to start, exactly what to do each week with really easy to follow instructional videos. But then we also have access to instructors. So you'll get put into a support group, and if things come up with your puppy or you want to see how well you're progressing, you can post videos. We'll give you feedback. We'll mold and steer you to make sure you're on the right track. A lot of times people are really struggling with things like nipping and biting or crate training, all of those types of things. Puppy Essentials is perfect for that. It's for puppies under 5 months. The other cool thing about it is, if you like these lives, is we actually do weekly Zoom private calls for all of our Puppy Essentials students where we deep dive into specific topics. And they're tons of fun for sure because it's a little bit more intimate because it's just the people that are in the class. But we really deep dive into some really important topics.
I need to mention this before the chat rolls up. Instructor Alexis just dropped a coupon code. And I mean, anybody can use this. That's in the chat tonight. So I'm pretty jazzed about
I didn't know we were doing that tonight.
Or, if that's an opportunity.
Bam.
We have the free videos here on YouTube. If you want more help, if you want a guided training experience, we do have puppy training as well as life skills for dogs that are 5 months old.
And then you get to hang out with us every week.
Yeah. Whether you want that, I mean, there's
whether you want that
much
or not.
less tooting. When we're talking about timing, the other thing I mentioned earlier when we were talking about addressing challenging issues, those nuisance behaviors, or you're like, I can't stop my dog from, insert your problem here. The other issue with timing is it's so important that you catch your dog in the act. In fact, that's a big part of their learning process. Whether it's digging into the garbage, digging in the yard, chewing on your shoe, peeing in the corner, chewing on the couch, barking, whatever it is, catching them in the act is a really important step to stop that problem. Everyone's like, well, what do I do? How do I stop my dog from chewing on X? And they expect, you take lemon juice and then you put it in a blender, and that's not the case. I mean, a lot of dogs will continue to chew. They chew because it feels good.
And nobody's there to tell them no.
Exactly. So that's also why we talk a lot about supervision, why supervision is so important. And to have good timing, you have to catch them in the act. So whether it's training up front, it's the good timing decisions on your part, or it's good timing when you catch them doing something they shouldn't be doing by using your voice with an or hey or something to mark that moment. Timing is critical when it comes to dog training. Value. We need to talk about value. And this is a pretty important thing to think about. This is, I would say, for most dog owners who are struggling, they don't really understand this part. What's valuable to your dog? Why do they choose to go play with the other dogs at the park and not listen to me the moment I take them off leash? Let's talk a little bit about value, why it's important.
So what we want to try and do when we're training dogs is to start off by building a lot of value for listening. And this actually goes back to kind of what I was saying before about using things like food. You're not limited to using food in your training. You could use toys, you could use affection, you could use body language. There's a lot of things that you could do to make listening to you more valuable. But that's how you have to start, because if you think about some of the unwanted behaviors that Ken had just listed, like barking and digging and all those types of things, those are what we call self-rewarding behaviors. And if my dog learns that is the place. Hey, would you stop, please?
You guys are playing now.
I know. The one that's barking is she's going to be 14 in like 2 months, and she is so frisky lately. Now I've lost my train of thought. Self-rewarding behavior. So if dogs are doing things that are very self-rewarding, which is what dogs will do, they always do things that they find rewarding. We then need to change the narrative for our dogs. We need to teach the dog, for example, that sitting beside us is equally, if not more valuable than jumping on our family member.
Right.
And so we need to change where the value is by teaching the dog that this different behavior is worth doing. And we need to do that by making it a positive experience. But while you're doing that, you need to make sure that you're not, going 2 steps ahead and 5 steps back by practicing this behavior, making it really valuable, but at the same time having poor timing and letting that bad behavior still happen to the side. So when you're working on building value, it's all about teaching the dog that doing whatever you want them to do is really, really worth it for them, which means you need to figure out how to set your dog up to be successful. And these, of course, are things that we walk you through in our online programs for walking, for recalls, for you name it. We start off with the good stuff first so that the dog says, I actually really like listening to you, because when I do, really good things happen. Yeah. So you mold and shape them to do things that you want.
A couple good questions that I think kind of speak to value a little bit. From Erica Anderson, timing is tough when the only food Pumpkin likes is very awkward to handle. She loves it and has laser focus the entire time. Help! So let's talk about some options, for different kinds of
First
rewards.
of all, Pumpkin is a really cute name for a dog.
I know, that is cute.
For a second, I thought she was talking about like
Pumpkin is the reward.
Yeah, because I read it quickly.
Maybe that's it. I don't know, that's cute either way.
I think it's the dog's name. So I don't know if you're only likes Foster Farms frozen grilled chicken strips, heated and chopped.
Wow.
That is super specific.
That is a very discriminating palate.
Yeah. I would venture to say that if your dog likes grilled chicken strips, you probably could just get away with like any type of chicken if that's what the dog likes. But think about how you can cook it so it's easier to hold in your hands. I actually really like to use chicken in my training. I'll like cut up like a leftover chicken breast and I'll cut it into smaller pieces, but it is a little bit hard to handle, you're right, because it kind of strings apart. There's a couple other types of treats that you could try. We have a really good tuna treat recipe that we talk about a lot on our channel here. I have a pretty food picky dog myself, our youngest, and I found that the tuna treat recipe has a lot of scent and it's really easy to hold in your hands because it's sort of semi-moist a little bit and it's really, really helpful. But anything with chicken I think would be really good. But in terms of like what you're trying to do in terms of the treat is you're looking to try to have the treat about the size of like the end of like a pencil eraser or a pea or something like that, so that you're not giving the dog like a meal, you're giving the dog like a tiny little taste.
So one thing dogs love is smelly treats. And
they do love smelly treats.
Can't stand making the tuna treats because I am disgusted by tuna, but the dogs absolutely love it. So keep that in mind. Maybe you need to pick like a smelly meat alternative for Pumpkin. Maybe that'll get you the same sort of attention that
chicken
you're
wieners. Try chicken wieners. Yep. My dogs love chicken wieners.
From Wormley. 1 second praise and treating, she won't eat them, isn't working as our Catahoula has started howling and baying at people no matter what. Help! So this is, we talk a little bit about this. There are some situations where food just doesn't matter for that dog. And if you feel like you're in a situation like that, you need to focus on the things that are making your dog unsuccessful. So distance can be a valuable tool, but I have a feeling that if it's something like someone walking by, you might either need to set that up so that you can start to work through it, or go as far away as you can so that you can reinforce the good choices with your Catahoula. I don't know what other things you want to mention, Kayl, for...
Yeah, I think if it's anytime you're in a situation where whatever reinforcer that you're using doesn't outweigh the distraction, you need to change the distraction. And there's lots of times that people put their dogs in situations that they're just not ready to function in yet because they don't have enough value for listening to you yet. Yeah. So try to make sure that when you're training just on your own where there's no distractions around, that you're really teaching your dog what behavior that you're going to use in that that scenario. So if say it's being around people, I need to make sure that I have a behavior that I can default to that my dog really loves. Maybe it's sitting and holding a sit on a loose leash, and I need to make that behavior very, very valuable so the dog says, "Ooh, I really like this. I like doing this behavior." So that when I'm then presented to a environment where there's more distractions, I can default to that particular behavior that the dog says, "I'm paying attention. I know this is a really great game." However, you can't go from like a distraction level 2 to like going onto a street with like a bunch of people and expect your dog to be successful. It just doesn't work that way. When you're dog training, you want to ease into distractions very gradually because dogs need to build on repetitions of success. Yeah. And sometimes if we make the scenario too challenging, you're just in a lose-lose situation and it's not going to be productive training. So you got to go slower.
Ash Gallagher. Hi, guys. Just wondering if B can please be a demo dog today. I miss seeing her freckle face. Also, Coda says hi, back to Funky.
I will let B come in and maybe sit on the lap. I don't know if I can use her in a demo today. The reason why I had to let her out is she's actually got a really upset stomach, and so we can't really give her treats right now. No. She just got a little upset today, but I'm sure she would more than love to come and sit on my lap and be on camera and just be snuggled. So when I'll bring her in a second.
I think Ash has the right idea, though. Why don't we do a demo?
Okay.
Maybe we're talking about value.
Yes.
Maybe one of the games that reinforces value with you over the food might be good.
Maybe I'll grab Slam for that, and then I promise that once we're done with Slam, then I'll switch it out for B because I want to make sure she gets on camera, but I don't want to give her treats.
Destiny the King will answer your question, or we'll touch on that question in just a minute. So if you haven't been here before, if this is your first time here on the train station, this is the part I enjoy because I wait all show to get to 2. And Kayl's going to do a demo with Grand Slam. When we're talking about value, we're talking about your dog choosing you. And in this example, in this demo, I think Kayl's going to show off. You good there?
Yeah.
Kayl's going to show off an exercise that you can do with your dog. These kinds of things are great leadership exercises, so I really want you to take note. If you have a young dog, puppy, young dog in training, definitely get out and work on some of these exercises with your dog on these. With no further ado, why don't we head on over to the train station?
So I want to show you. Oh, sorry. Oh. Apparently the camera wasn't ready yet. So I want to show you guys a fun little really simple game that we play with the dogs as one of the ways to teach our dogs that paying attention to us is valuable. So all you need to do to play this game is a willing participant and some training treats. And I'm just literally using some of Slam's dinner to practice this. So what I'm going to do is start with my dog just sitting or standing or even lying down in front of me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some food on his nose and I'm going to purposefully draw his attention away from me. I'm going to draw his attention away from me. I'm just going to reward him a few times because I want to have him do this wrong so you guys can see what I need to do. Yes, good boy. So I'm going to draw his attention away from me. And when I draw his attention away from me, rather than give him the food, I'm simply going to hold the food out where he can see it. And I'm going to wait silently. And I want him to figure out what he can do differently in order to earn the reward. And what I'm specifically looking for him to do is to look away from the food in my hand or away from the distraction and choose me instead. And if he does that, I'm going to say yes and reward. But when we're trying to build value for us, the best place that a reward should come from is from you. So I wouldn't want to say yes and feed him out here. I don't want him to think that food magically falls out of the sky into his mouth. I'm going to yes and feed from my body, from my face to bring more value to myself. So without further ado, I'll show you what it looks like without gabbing so much. So I have the food on his nose. I'm just going to lure his attention off to the side. Yes, good. So he just sort of looked to the side there. As soon as I got that focus on me, I pinpointed it with the word yes. Remember earlier we referenced timing. So I said yes the moment I had a little bit of focus, and then I rewarded him. But the reward didn't come from the distraction hand. It came from my face. I'll show you again. I'm going to lure his attention away from me. Yes, good boy. And if he looks back, I'm going to yes and reward. I'll show you one more time, and then I'm going to do a harder version so you can really see the difference. Yes, good boy. So I'm watching his eyes very closely here, and I don't know if you guys can see really well. He's not actually turning his head at first. He's actually looking to the side with his eyeballs, and then he's turning his head. But I'm yesing and rewarding the eye contact here, and I want to be very quick with that. Now, I'm going to make this a little bit more challenging. Now, Grand Slam really, oh, this is his favorite. Oh, Bean, what's this? This is your favorite toy. What's this? So I can do this with any type of distraction. I could do it with food. I could do it with toys. Eventually, I could do it with people on the street, whatever I need to do that way. Oh, slam bam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, come here, bud. I'm just going to put him inside so he can see. I'm going to put the toy down, and I'm going to, again, wait for him to look away from the toy and back at me. What's this? Ready? Yes, you are so smart. Yes, good. So waiting for him to look up at me. Yes, good. Again, notice the placement of my reward. Now, if this reward, or if the distraction is something that I don't mind Slam having, I could also do this. Yes, get it. Yay! So his reward for looking at me is that he gets to go get the reward from there. So I'm just changing the value. Rather than having a dog that just launches at a distraction, I would rather him say, hey, Mom, is that something that I can go to first? And that's a really good lesson for around people. You know, he's a really friendly dog. He likes people, but I don't necessarily want him just running up to every single person that he sees, dragging and pulling me along the way. I would rather him check in on a loose leash and say, hey, Mom, can I go? Can I not go? And then I can either say yes or no, depending on what's happening. But the value is on me because of how he's reinforced. And something as simple as training this, you know, in the living room with a toy or with some food can easily be transferred to other scenarios. But remember what I said before, you're not just going to go from, you know, doing this in treats with your living room to going to a really high, crazy distraction place and say, oh, this training doesn't work. You have to build it very, very slowly. You have to make sure you do lots of repetitions so the dog truly does feel very valuable when they check in with you. So hopefully you find that helpful. Was there anything else you wanted me to show?
I don't know. Was there any other exercises you wanted to do? Like for dogs who are super motivated by food, I guess you kind of did that.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah. Okay, let's head back.
Okay, come here, Bean.
Kayl touched on a pretty important point there, and it is you do some of these exercises in a quiet environment so that you know your dog can be successful. That's good dog training. That's smart dog training. And there's a point between training inside and doing it every day in the real world, or there are several points often, where you're making it just a little bit more challenging, but you're doing the same exercise. It's really important that you don't overface your dog with challenge by working on this exercise in your train station and then heading out to the park and trying to get the same sort of attention from your dog. The dog's just not likely going to be successful because over centuries, dogs have learned to survive by being aware of all of the things around them. They're very environmentally aware of changes and new people and things to hunt. So you need to overcome that. You need
distraction levels, like stimulation. Sure. And it depends on the breed too. Like there's some dogs that are like very being so silly right now. They're very distracted by like motion and excitement and things like that. There's other dogs that maybe are more distracted by noises. So you kind of have to get to know your dog so that you can make proper training choices for that particular dog.
Absolutely. So before you go out and think that your dog isn't going to learn it, that your training isn't working, you need to show your dog that you are worth listening to. I'll jump into this super chat from Destiny the King. Is switching raw to kibble good? I mean, there's so much conversation in the dog world about what you should feed your dog and why one is better than the other. We fed raw at one point in time and switched to kibble.
Yeah.
But I think the best, most definitive answer is to talk to your vet. See what your dog needs. This is so common where people are like, oh, I'm feeding this thing because I just believe that this is better. Your vet will be able to tell you that this dog needs more of whatever it is. So I would definitely get some advice from your vet before switching their food at all.
You can also talk to dog nutritionists as well. You know, there's a lot of trends out there for, food and things like that. And sometimes people just feed because of the trend.
Right.
And from our experience, we have a lot of dogs. Ken and I have 6 dogs. We had some dogs that did really well on raw. We had some dogs that did horrible on raw. So it's not, you have a dog, you should feed this thing. Right. Every dog's a little bit different. They're just like people. Some people do great, as a vegetarian, and some people do horrible. So you it's best to talk to your vet and even a nutritionist to make sure that you're making the right choice for your dog, because they're all a little bit different.
Follow through is an important part, is a huge mistake that a lot of people make. And this is, we often refer to this as say what you mean. And I mean, be honest with yourself. Have you done this? Have you gone out trying to show off that your dog does a great job, sit or down or whatever the thing is, and it doesn't happen, and you're like, oh, I'll just say it again. Sit, 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 sit. Sit. Eventually the dog sits.
Sitting.
I know you're good. Sorry, buddy. Eventually your dog sits and you're like, yes, nailed it. This is pretty common, and this is actually watering down what that word means. Have you gone out somewhere outside? Maybe it's your backyard. This is so common. People will let their dog out in their yard, for example, to go pee or whatever, and then they'll call the dog 8, 10, 12 times until the dog, and then they'll go get a bag of cookies and shake like, hey, treats, cookies. And you can't do that kind of thing for your dog's sake. That's not good training. You need to say what you mean. So if you're going to ask your dog something and you're not sure what the result is going to be, you're in the training phase. And I want you to think about that, because there's a difference between the training phase and the testing phase. Mm-hmm. And if you aren't 99% sure your dog's going to be successful, then you're in the training phase. Let's talk a little bit about what the difference might be and when it might be applicable for you.
Yeah, definitely. So the training or the teaching phase is when you're ready to show your dog how to be successful. And really early on with a dog that has no training or maybe a young puppy, we would actually not put the dog in any type of scenario where we would test them. So we would ask them to do something and see whether they respond. In the first part of our training with a dog, it's all hear the word or see the hand signal and then be shown what to do, whether that's through luring with some food or, like I said before, using some body language to encourage the puppy to respond to that particular thing. But we're showing them what to do. We're teaching and training them word association, body language association, lots and lots of rewards and reinforcement. It goes back to our previous thing of value, building value for listening to that particular thing. And then from there, we would go into the proofing phase where, if I tell you to do this behavior, can you do it when I'm clapping my hands, or if I'm at a bit of a distance, or if I'm waving a toy, or whatever it might be. I don't just go from showing the dog to testing it and making it, last me forever. We go through a bit of a proofing phase, because that's where you figure out where your holes are. That's where you start to figure out, okay, well, my dog's really good at this in the kitchen when there's not much going on, but, at the end of the driveway when there's cars going past, it's a total disaster. So what can I do in between that to start working my way towards what my ultimate goal would be? So the proofing phase is really, really important, and lots of dogs are going to have challenges in different areas. And then, of course, once you've proofed it, now you're ready to go into the testing phase. But what a lot of people need to remember, that even when you get into the testing phase, so even now, Beeline, she's a very, very well-trained dog. But there are times, because she is a dog, she is not a robot, right, girl, that she sometimes, very rarely, but occasionally doesn't listen to my standards. So if I call her and she decides that she's going to keep, sticking her nose in the dead animal that she found on the hike, and I tell her to leave it, and she takes, a couple extra seconds to respond, what I need to do then is really important. And this is where say what you mean is important. What I don't want to do is just fall back into, oh, come on, leave it. What I really need to do is follow through. I need to go right up to her and, put her leash on and work through it so that she learns that when I ask her to do something, she needs to listen, so that her listening stays sharp all the time. But the progression that you get to that point is slow and steady. And sometimes people they rush into the testing phase before they've done any teaching or any proofing, and that's why you don't have the reliability or also the attitude. Like we said before, dogs, when they hear the word come, like when I actually going through this with Euchre right now. I just graduated grade 1 with Euchre, which is equal to our life skills program online. And one of the challenges that I had in my final class was when other people were calling their dogs to come.
Right.
Because I have built so much value for the word come that when Euchre heard other people say come, she would start to get, oh my God, it's almost my turn. She would be so excited because that word has such a crazy, fun association. Beeline is having a party for one behind us with a toy. She must not be that sick.
No. The other something that I was just thinking about. It's hard to. Maybe we should take that away or just move her back over here.
It's very distracting. Yeah. It's funny.
If you're wondering, so here's a good example. We talk a little bit in our puppy recall videos. Well, what do you do if I can't call my dog's name, which is ultimately what I want them to respond to, or I want to train like the come command? Well, what do? You have some throwaway words, and actually, in our biggest mistakes for teaching a puppy recall video, I think it's something like called that. We talk about having here, which is just sort of an informal. Doesn't matter if the dog doesn't really listen. We're setting our dog up to listen, but it's much less formal. We don't care if the dog doesn't respond right away. Maybe you use pop, 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 throwaway word. You're not going to use your dog's name. In fact, we don't use our dog's names for weeks when they're home until we can't remember the last. They can't remember the last time they didn't hear it. Unless we're training it.
Unless we're teaching it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We don't ever test our dogs in these situations. Every single time we're saying our dog's name or we're using the come command, we're teaching. We're making sure the dog can be successful because the last thing we want to do is teach them that when they hear that word, nothing happens. It's not worth it. So you need to be really careful about that. The other thing we'll do is always manage the dog well. So we'll have a leash or a line, or they'll be closed in an area where they can't get into trouble. So really think about those two things, management, and then what are you going to do? What are you going to use as a command if you're being so great about being consistent and following through?
I think it's also really important to remember in this say what you mean phase, or any of them really, is that I think what people need to remember with dog training is that it's not like an overnight thing. It takes time. And really, the best decisions you can make for your dog that's young, or even if you have an older dog that just does not listen, is stop putting them in situations where they cannot listen to you. Yeah. So if I have a dog that doesn't have a strong recall, if I have a dog that barks at people that go by the backyard, if I have a dog that, makes these mistakes, that tears the couch up when I leave, my dog's not going to have an opportunity to do that because they will not be loose if I leave. They won't be in the backyard unless I'm out there. If the neighbor's dogs are out, I'm not going to allow them to be in a scenario. I wouldn't take them to a dog park to play if they wouldn't come back to me. We don't take all of our young dogs. I go on hikes and walks with my dogs every single day, off leash, in fields, in trails and things like that. I don't take Euchre yet because she's 7 months old and she's still learning. So I'm not going to put her in a scenario where she could ignore me and not listen. I'm training and training and training and training so that I can get to a point where she can be in that scenario and be successful. So sometimes we have to make big sacrifices to actually get what we want from the dog. And then later on, you can loosen the reins and be as free with him as you want. But if you don't do that early enough, you're just going to have a dog that learns to not listen forever.
This is the thing that will accelerate your training. Like, this is the thing. Having rules, being very clear, up front is exactly why when they're 8 months old, 6 months old, whatever that thing is, when you can't remember the last time they made a mistake, when they get all the freedom. And, you've taught them that you are worth listening to every single time. It's so... I came to McCann Dogs as a student. It was a nightmare situation. I had given my black lab dog all the wrong information, and my vet said, listen, he couldn't even assess her. He's like, listen, you got to go over to McCann Dogs. And I begrudgingly went. I didn't want to do... I think I used it the right way. I went to training, and I didn't want to go to training. I tried all sorts of other stuff. All the fences and the things and the collars and the harnesses, all that stuff. I tried it all.
The bow and arrow.
Yeah, that's a pretty neat thing, and a Nerf thing. Yeah, the bow, I don't know. But what I discovered was simply changing some of when I became a student and I started going through classes, simply changing my management made a huge difference so that I didn't have to wonder what the heck she was doing when I wasn't there to watch her. And the other thing I did is I got really strict about when I'd use commands, when I'd ask her to do something. And I was shocked at how quickly it made sense to her. She wouldn't listen before. drag me down the street. It was just awful. I'm so lucky to have gone to McCann Dogs and learned some of these tips and like management techniques and some of this stuff about follow through. It makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. If I'd done that all up front, I would have had a couple of extra years of even more freedom with my dog. But if you have an older dog, you just start applying these rules and you will start to see a change, which is really exciting about methodology, I guess. From Alaya. She says, any advice on my 1-year-old shepherd, Mocha, who has separation anxiety? I feel like she thinks whenever my boyfriend and I leave the house, we've abandoned her.
This is a challenging one to answer, Aaliyah, because we really have to know a little bit more about the scenario. But I'll just sort of give you some general things as to how we know. Separation anxiety is a pretty big word.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very, very serious issue with dogs. And sometimes...
In some cases.
Yeah, in some cases, dogs don't actually have separation anxiety. It's just behavior that you need to change. Yep. And sometimes there's true separation anxiety, and that cannot be answered over a live stream. We would need to know the whole story. So I'm just going to give you some general things, hoping that some of it will help. Number one is when you leave the house... or when you're not leaving the house, I should say, try to make sure that, number one, you don't have a specific routine that's going to tip the dog off that you're leaving. That can be a helpful thing. Another thing that I find, too, is that, if you're using things like a crate, which we would highly suggest that you do, especially with a dog who's having some separation issues, crating the dog at home while you're home can be really helpful, because sometimes what happens is, if you put them away and then every time you put them away and you leave the house, or you do this specific thing and then you leave the house, the dog starts to have an association. When you do this, you leave me. The other piece of advice is try to make sure that you're not making it worse by how you react to the dog. There's a lot of people, when the dog starts to whine or get all worked up, that people go back in the house, they go back to the dog and they go, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, pup. And you're just fueling the fire. The dog's like, oh, you're back and you're praising me and you love me. I was so worried and now you're here and everything's better. So, when you're coming and going, be very neutral with your dog. Don't make a big deal about leaving. Don't make a big deal about coming home. In fact, ignore the dog altogether until it's a little bit more settled.
That can really be an impactful thing. That
Huge.
You don't rush in the door and immediately let your dog Mocha out of the crate or the kennel.
Yeah.
Or if Mocha's, the other thing you might find is if you aren't using something like some way to confine Mocha's space a little bit, is that Mocha may be getting a little bit more worked up with room to pace and room to run and windows to look out.
They're also more likely to destroy things when they're loose and they have separation anxiety. And then the other thing too is like what we did with our young dog. She's a COVID puppy, so she went months and months and months and months and months without Ken and I ever leaving the house, which is so different than any other dog we've ever raised. And one of the first times I left the house, I could hear her just screaming in the crate as I left, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've actually left her alone in the house, which was shocking. So we did some training. I filled a Kong, a toy for her in her crate, and I would just go outside and I would sit on the front step. I remember one time you came home and I was sitting on the step on my phone and you were like, what are you doing? And I was like, working on Euchre not barking when I leave the house, because I could go in and out. I didn't actually leave the house for a while and have no idea what she was doing.
That was training.
It was training. Yeah. I chose times when she was quiet to go in and praise her. I chose times when she was barking and being a brat to go in and correct her, so that she had really good information. But I had to do that at a time when I didn't actually have to leave the house. So that was a big, wide range of things. Hopefully something there would help. But if it's more serious, contact us and we can help you more individually.
It's funny how, and even I didn't when I was a student, I didn't really see, it's hard to know the difference between training, natural training opportunities, and things that just look like stuff you do with your dog. For example, that exercise that where you were sitting on the step waiting to hear how she made out, or asking her to go in her crate when you actually weren't leaving, that's training.
Yeah.
But the next point is natural training opportunities. I couldn't get it all on the thing here with this
NTOs, baby.
Yeah. NTOs, natural training opportunities. This is the bridge between your training in your house, your training in your yard, wherever you go, that you're being really successful, to the real world. And these are things that can happen every single day.
Yeah.
Great leadership opportunities. Let's go through an average, a day you might be having at home, an average day with our dog, the natural training opportunities from the moment we get up in the morning.
Yep. And that sort of has to go with like management as well. Management is also training. So for example, when we let Euchre out of her crate in the morning, we don't just let her out of the crate and like run around. She comes out and we, have her sit. We have her show some control. I put the line on before we go out for a pee. She stops and waits at the step. Now, when she was learning to do that, when I was training her to do that when she was younger, I would have some treats on me and we would get to the top of the stairs. I would lure her into a sit. I would reward her. And then I would tell her, okay. And then down we would go. So I'm managing her the whole time, but showing her what to do. After she has a pee, I might practice 1 or 2 recalls. Again, I'm not taking a huge time out of my day. I have to let her out for a pee anyway, so I might as well get some training in there. So I'm balancing out managing, teaching her what I want her to do in those moments, rewarding her for those things, but also getting the training in at the same time. And then I sort of continue that process all throughout the day. There really isn't, when I have a young dog, a time where they're like off doing their own thing and I'm off doing my own thing. Basically, my youngsters are in their crate, or when they're out, we're actively doing things together so I can be molding and shaping them into the perfect house dog or the perfect dog outside by showing them what I want them to do in different scenarios. Euchre's been learning to go and lie on a bed and lie down for treats since she was 8 weeks old. But I never told her to lie down on the bed and remain there as I made dinner when she was 8 weeks old. The bed exercise was standing there, rewarding her, making a big deal, and then releasing her. And I wasn't doing anything else but focusing solely on her until that behavior became a bit more valuable. So try and find times in your daily schedule that you can work into some training. You don't have to set aside, an hour a day to train the dog and then not do anything else with them for the rest of the day. You need to incorporate your management skills and your training into everyday situations for your dog so that they know what they should be doing, because we don't want a dog learning to listen. When you put the leash on, you strap the bait bag on, and you're like, okay, now you're listening to me. And then they learn that in other scenarios, you're not going to follow through. They're allowed to self-reward. They don't really need you. So those things are not really something we even want the dog to know exists.
I see a couple of people mentioned in the chat talking about like sitting at the dinner table and their dog's underneath or fussing away or jumping up on the counter. There's all kinds of natural training opportunities that you can take advantage of. Kayl mentioned asking the dog to go.
Or don't.
Or don't allow that with good management. But I want to talk briefly about jumping up on the counter. Because a lot of people say, well, I can do all this training, but what do I do when I'm not in the room?
Yeah.
You don't allow the dog in that area to make that mistake. But you could take advantage of this natural training opportunity when you know, okay, I'm going to be in the kitchen, for example. I'm going to be cutting up dinner or something like that. I'm also going to be 90% focused on this training opportunity that I have. I'll give myself a little bit more time to get dinner prepared, but I'll work on rewarding my dog for lying on their bed. Maybe it's sitting away from the countertop. We have a couple of videos about jumping and counter jumping here on the YouTube channel, but you need to understand that if you can't, this goes back to timing. If you don't see it happen, you can't fix it. So you need to be really careful about things like counter jumping. So make it part of your day. As you're going to get dinner ready, maybe you practice rewarding the dog on a mat that's by the door, whatever your situation is. Rewarding your dog in a few steps away in the hallway, whatever the situation is. You need to make sure that the dog is choosing to go there, choosing to go to that spot, because they've had such a high history of reward, and it's way better than you scolding them when they try to jump up on the countertop. But these kinds of things happen every single day. Waiting to come out of your crate, great leadership moment. Not allowing the dog to come blasting out of the crate, which we have a couple of videos on, is a great opportunity, natural training opportunity. Your dog's going to be coming out of their crate. They're going to be going through your front door every single day. Why don't you get them to earn it a little bit? Why don't you get them to put in a little bit of effort? You'd be amazed at how all of a sudden your dog's listening better. Like they're looking to you for information. It's steps like this. It's not teaching them to look in a direct line. It's not just that. It's these other little moments. It's these other little leadership opportunities that are really going to make you someone worth listening to for your dog.
And then just the last point is remember that sometimes you don't have to train. You know, there's lots of times when Ken and I want to have dinner and our youngest, who's 7 months, she doesn't quite know how to perfectly go and lie down and like sleep, for example, if we're eating dinner. She doesn't jump up at the counter or anything, but she wants to like play with her bone or play with her toy, and she's just busy. And sometimes Ken and I just want to eat in peace. So we just put her in the crate. Yep. And we are not mad, we're not angry, but we don't allow her to make poor mistakes. I don't want to spend my dinner telling her to stop or to go and lie down. That's not the energy that I want to give out. So sometimes it's okay just to put them away and do your thing. And, you know, when your attention could be fully towards the dog, then give it to them from there. But you should never feel guilty about, you know, putting them in their crate or avoiding the situation. You shouldn't do that all of the time. Obviously, you need to train, but you know, it's better to do that than have bad training.
Yeah, and that is a perfect natural training opportunity. Yeah. You know, because you're there, you need to be focused on it. Mm-hmm. The next thing we need to talk about when it comes to these skills, the mistakes that people make, is they don't proof the skills. Mm-hmm. Kayl talked a little bit about proofing earlier, but this is where it crystallizes for your dog. This is what I expect you to do, because you're very tactical about how you increase the challenge. You're building on this foundation. You've worked your butt off to get them to sit when you ask them to respond to your name. But all of that goes out the window if you don't do some proofing. Let's talk a little bit about proofing, and you know, how can people make choices along the way? We talk about the 3 Ds, for example, but how can people make choices to make their training proofing be successful?
Well, usually what we do when we're trying to prove something is we would add like distractions first before we would change locations, for example. So we would ease into it. So if I was, you know, teaching my dog to just use like a simple example, sit at my side for control, and I was training that in my kitchen, for example, I would try to be smart about not going from the kitchen to, you know, going to something really more challenging. I might have my dog practice in the kitchen, and then I might say, hey, Ken, can you come in and like walk by the dog a few times? And then I could reward my dog for making a good choice. Or if my dog made a mistake, then I could fix her and show her what I need to do differently. And if it proved that Ken walking by her was too valuable, I would say, hey, Ken, walk by her, but go on like the other side of the kitchen. So I would adapt the distraction to find a threshold where my puppy could, or my dog, doesn't matter the age, could be more successful, and then I could work. And if she could do that, Ken, walk by the kitchen and like bounce a tennis ball or shake a toy or whatever, let the cat in, or, you know, have another dog out or whatever it might be. So I add distractions first rather than change the environment, because changing the environment can be one of the hardest things for dogs to do, because they're very situational learners. They can learn to do something really well in one scenario and then not so great in another scenario unless you go through the steps with them. So it's important to know that when it comes to thinking about proofing, is that they're very situational learners. And we often refer to in our training about the 3 Ds, so distance, distraction, and duration. And when we're proofing a skill with our dog, we would never test in the initial stages those 3 things at the exact same time. So I wouldn't, you know, test my walking by going for, you know, a 45-minute walk in a busy place and like not have treats on me, which I don't think anybody would do that. That's very extreme. That does not sound like a recipe for success. But I wouldn't try all of those things at the same time. I might work on duration, but I might go at a time when there's like nothing going on, where it's really quiet, late at night when there's no one around, and I could maybe go on a longer walk from there. Or I'm going to do something short with lots of distractions. So you want to kind of think about distance, distraction, duration are the 3 things that you can alter, and think about which one of those would make the most sense for your dog to kind of work through first. Mm-hmm. And then the best dog training is when people recognize, whoa, this is not going well. How can I change things that my dog can be right? For sure. Far too often people put the dog in a scenario where they're wrong. Yep. And then they just keep doing it, and they keep doing it, and they keep doing it, hoping that someday it will magically change. And that's not how dogs work. So you have to look at the scenario and say, what can I do differently so this can be successful? And then slowly work your way back to that. that point.
We really want to teach our dogs that the word, whatever the word is that we're using, means the same thing no matter where you are. Remember, these are just sounds to your dog, and you've taught them that every time you say this thing, you expect them to do something, and they're rewarded for it. So as you take your training outside and to the park, and you have all these extra challenges, you need to reinforce for them that still checking in with you is worth this, is worth, a food reward, or maybe it's a toy reward or something like that. But the proof is in the proofing. When you get outside and you start to be unsuccessful, this is where you need to take a step back and really double down on maybe that skill. Maybe it's funny because maybe something like the recall is just too distracting for your dog, but they walk great on leash and they, give you lots of attention and they sit well and they just listen all the time, unless they don't have a great recall. And that you need to identify that as a dog owner. You need to, part of leadership, we've talked about this a little bit tonight, but part of good leadership is knowing what your dog sucks at and how to set them up to be successful and understanding what motivates them and, really digging into the proofing, really working hard on adding little challenges along the way. Maybe it's you take one of their favorite toys and you work on a stationary exercise in a busy environment. Stationary is great because there's less moving parts. You're less likely for the dog to be unsuccessful. But work on that stationary exercise and then break it off, and then they get to play with their favorite toy. These are the kinds of things I want you to be thinking about. These are the mistakes that people make as they go out into the park and they're like, I guess he's not listening. My training's not working. Really important stuff.
We have another super chat that we need to go back to.
Okay. Stand by one. From Aaliyah?
Nope. One before that. Kayoma Patel.
Okay, stand by 1 second. I'll find that. I'm just gonna add this.
Do you want me to start reading the question?
I'll grab it here.
Where do you want to find it?
From
Kayoma is right here.
Yeah, no, I can't.
All right. So the question is, I have a 7-week-old husky named Lyra on walks. She will follow me if I drop the leash and start walking away, but won't walk with me with a leash in hand. So first of all, 7 weeks old is really little. That's a baby puppy. And at this point, I actually wouldn't recommend that you go on walks with a 7-week-old puppy for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, they're not going to have all of their shots yet. So having them out and about in, walking environment is not safe. But what I would actually start off with a puppy of that age is just having a collar on the puppy with a house line on. And we have lots of great videos about what a house line is, but it's just like a little light line or leash that we put on the house so that we always have control. And I would just start off by letting your puppy just drag that around the house to be comfortable with. And it sounds like she's already a little bit comfortable with that. She'll follow you if you drop the leash. Make sure it's really light. And then what I would start to do I start to build value for just her following you around. So take some of her breakfast, take some of her dinner, and just encourage her to follow you while you reward. And then you're eventually going to do the same thing while holding that little line or leash in your hand. But you're going to do this in the house when there is nothing going on. So no walks with the puppy at this point. We actually don't recommend taking dogs on actual full-blown walks until you've trained them to walk on a leash, which typically takes a few months. So to give you a reference, I haven't really I have a 7-month-old puppy. I just only started taking her on actual walks just a couple months ago. I spent all of that time training her how to walk on a loose leash, how to stop and sit at my side, how to leave distractions so that when I went out for a walk, it was much more productive. And instead, of course, we have to walk and exercise our dogs. I would exercise her in other ways, like playing with her in the yard or doing some retrieve or doing some chase games. So she was getting great exercise, and I was training her on the leash every single day, but not when I was physically walking around the block. It would be up and down the driveway. It would be around the house. But again, only 7 weeks old. You just want to lay low right now and just start with little itty bitty baby steps with a dog that young. That's even a young dog to even be home, let alone be worrying about walking training. And
Lyra's going to have lots of energy. You're going to have a puppy with tons of energy. So focus on some of those exercises we talked about. Actually, our series with Euchre, we do a lot of games and restraint recalls down the hallway. That might be a great thing to do with Lyra, but everyone seems to be in a hurry to want to get out and walk their dog, and anatomically it's not good for them at that point. So work on some of those other ways to really tire them out.
She says, I hear you. Thanks. Awesome.
Ash just mentioned. Just having a moment, Coda's chilling out on her bed without being asked and no food bribery. She's so busy, I didn't think this would ever happen. Happy crying.
Yay!
Ash is one of our online students.
That's the
Amazing.
best. Take a picture and send it to all your friends. That's what
Yes.
we do.
Yeah.
Anytime our dogs actually
awesome.
chill out without being asked, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like, it's like they're starting to grow up. That is very exciting. I'm very excited for you.
From Aliyah? Any specific tips on how to tire out an indoor GSD or games to keep her mind stimulated? Well, Aliyah, you have asked the right question because we just talked about some of those things. Tug games, even outside, playing tug, restraint recalls in the hallway. Learning fetch is a little bit more of an advanced skill, but we do talk about, people undervalue the brain games, like doing exercises with your brain, trick training.
Problem solving.
Yeah, problem
shaping,
solving.
Trick training.
It really gives your dog some variety in their training. You'll see through some of our videos, some of the exercises that we do with them. But when it comes to indoor, there are definitely some limitations when you have a larger breed dog, but maybe you have a small area that you can work outside or like in a, whatever, beside wherever you live, that don't require a lot. So like doing restraint recalls, playing a tug can happen in the house. Just make sure you have a good footing. But there are so many great ways that can reinforce leadership, that can reinforce listening, that aren't going for a walk, that will tire out that dog in a hurry. And don't overlook things like trick training. They're fun.
Yeah.
They're good for the dog. They give the dog problem solving skills, which is something that you definitely want down the road.
It really helps with like bond as well. Actually, we have a couple of really great videos on our YouTube channel. I'm not sure if you've seen them or not, but two come to mind. There's one about 5 ways that you can exercise your dog like just in the living room. That would be a really good one for you to watch. And then I think we also have another one on things that you can do to exercise your dog if you can't take them for a walk or if you're like not taking them for a walk.
Yep.
We have that as well. I'm sure one of our amazing moderators will pop one of those at least into the chat. But those would be really good ways because there's a little bit more tutorial. It would actually walk you through how to teach some of those things, which I think you would find really helpful.
And those dogs need exercise. You need to do stuff with that dog to burn off that energy. So we want you to get out and do fun things with your puppy or young dog in training. Just don't allow the dog to rehearse bad stuff. Don't allow the dog to rehearse the things that you don't want. So don't go for a walk if your dog's not ready for that.
Dan's just dropped
a million ways to burn off that energy.
the living room fitness video in the chat there for you, Aaliyah. So check that out. And then Lexi just did 5 tricks to teach your dog at home that will exercise them at home. Both of those videos will be awesome for you to watch. Actually, for lots of people to watch, regardless of the age of your dog. I think you guys will find that one a lot of fun.
Ken begrudgingly joined McCann Dogs, but he did it. Got his dog trained and was so lucky to also find his wife.
You sure were.
That's true. Very true.
That's funny.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, for dogs that are over 5 months, some opportunities that people could have to get the dog trained.
Yeah, so if you have a dog that's over 5 months, so I talked about Puppy Essentials earlier, our puppy course, but we also have a dog training course that is specifically designed for dogs over 5 months with an entirely different set of exercises called Life Skills. And in that particular program, we are going to start to work on everyday life skills. That's why we call it that. Teaching them to do things like walk on a loose leash, like we've talked a lot about tonight, actually. Having a really reliable recall to come when they're called, no matter what the distraction is. Manners around people, self-control, how to learn to go and lie down on a bed and be calm. All kinds of things that are going to make your dog just a really, really great family pet. With this course, of course, you also get full support from instructors. So it's not just one of those programs that you just like watch a video and then that's it, you're on your own.
You need help.
Yeah, you need
what
help.
I would say.
Yeah.
I needed help.
We are helping you every step of the way. So it includes weekly, individual Zoom live classes that are recorded, that you can go back. So if you can't watch it live, you always have access to it. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos specific for our life skills students that really dive deep into a lot of different things. And if you have a question, you can just jump into the support group or send an email and the instructor will be able to help you through. So it's really, really personalized. It's very, very supported. And you also get access to see all of the other students' questions and answers. And you can learn from other people's experiences as well, which I know is a really great thing. Also, you make a lot of friends.
Yeah, there's
Debbie
Debbie.
Goldberg, and she has like a whole whackload of friends from Life Skills, which is awesome. Anyways, it's a really, really great course.
So if we don't see you,
One more thing. I actually saw Dan had drawn our attention to. Somebody was asking if they could take the course if they don't live in North America.
Oh, yeah.
And absolutely, the online course, we have actually students from over 48 countries in the program. It doesn't matter what time zone you are. We have it set up so that no matter where you are in the world, you can take the class. Everything is recorded, so if it happens to be, and we move times around, so we don't host live events at the same time all the time.
Ash, for example, is in Australia.
Yeah,
I mean,
Ash is
people
in
from all over the
Australia,
world.
exactly. So it's super accommodating, regardless of where you are.
I see Minerva's dropped the super chat, $5 super chat. Thank you for the super chat. I don't see no message attached, but maybe you can reach out to us after if you come up with a question. I mean, I don't know. The 5 mistakes, most common dog training mistakes that people make. Poor timing. We talked about why that's important.
You say poor funny.
Value. They don't teach their dog that you don't teach your dog that you are worth listening to. Follow through. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Help your dog to be successful by being consistent. Really, really important. The NTOs. What does it stand for? Natural training opportunities. The natural training opportunities that happen every single day that are the bridge between your training exercises and your real life. And then proofing these skills. You need to add some challenge in there. You need to teach your dog that the word means the same thing no matter where you are, no matter what's around, and it will help you to be successful. Now, with all of the training, all of the teaching, all of the things that we've talked about tonight, the rest, my friends, is up to you.
We do these live streams to educate you, but more importantly, to motivate you. You can have the dog that you've always wanted, but it's just going to take you a little bit of work.
I would know because I was just like you. Long before I became a dog trainer, I was a frustrated dog owner, but the skills that I learned at McCann's changed my life. Now we have hundreds of videos here on our YouTube channel to help you to have a well-behaved four-legged family member.
But if you want someone to guide you through the dog training process, then you should check out our Puppy Essentials program for puppies under 6 months. If your dog is over 6 months, then you could join our Life Skills program, and our instructors are going to help to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible in a really supportive environment.
Now, all of the knowledge about dog training in the world won't help you to be successful unless you get up and you start training. The real question is, what are you going to train next?
Happy training.